Hey everyone, Nick Dearbertis here teaching you financial modeling. Today we're going to be talking about styling Pandas DataFrames as part of our lecture series on understanding complex results with visualization. So we learned last time about these Pandas DataFrames which let you get a tabular representation of your data in Python. And we just had kind of the basic default way that these things looked, and now we're going to learn how we can add our own custom styles and formatting to our data frames. So where this is important is you definitely want to have number formatting when you display any tables to the reader of your model so that it's much easier to understand what those numbers mean. And you may want to add additional styles, especially something like conditional formatting, where you highlight certain values based on some conditions to make it easier for the reader to understand the data in your table. Now, most people probably already are very familiar with styling tables in Excel. You can change the number formatting, you can change add borders, you can change colors, all these kind of things are just up there available in the ribbon. With Pandas, of course, you're using lines of code to do this formatting, but it's a lot more flexible than the formatting in Excel. And the reason that it's more flexible is the way that it's built. So when you see that table representation of the data, the way that Pandas, the authors of Pandas, have made this happen is it actually produces HTML and CSS for this data to display this data frame. And HTML and CSS, for people that aren't familiar, together make up the markup language which describes how any web page looks. So anything that you've ever seen on any website, you could potentially make your data frame look like that. And basically anything at all, because of how flexible HTML and CSS are. And so you can go all the way to that complete control by directly manipulating the HTML and CSS of the representation of your data frame, but that is definitely a little bit more advanced. They've also added a lot of more convenient things that you can just easily do out of the box with simple commands that represent some of the most common things that you would want to do with your formatting. So things like changing colors, size, positioning of text, adding captions to your table, conditional formatting, and drawing a bar graph within the table. These things are all kind of well explained and easily there out of the box, but anything that you can possibly imagine, you can do that with styling data frames. So let's go ahead and take a look at the example notebook on what we can do. So first, let's talk about number formatting. So we've already learned about number formatting with just plain numbers in Python, and we've been doing that using f-strings. So with the f-strings, we take the number and we put it in this quoted string with an f on the beginning, and then inside that we do the curly braces, and then within the curly braces we put our variable on the left and then a colon, and then we put the format code that we want to use to describe the data. And so we're going to take that same concept over to Pandas as well. Now, before we actually style our first data frame, I do want to mention kind of a philosophical difference between the formatting in Excel and the formatting of Pandas data frames in Python. So in Excel, you have your data in a table, and then you go and you format that table. And now the original data is formatted. But in Python, with Pandas, we have a separation of the data and the display of the data. Instead of directly styling the original data, we actually create a separate object, a style object, which is the formatted representation of the data, but that does not carry those changes back to the original data. The original data is still unformatted. So we only apply this formatting just as we're about to display this information to the reader of the model. And that's the same way that things are working here with the f strings and formatting numbers in Python. You know, we did this, but my num is still the same exact number. It doesn't have this formatting on it. It was just as soon as we were ready to display that to the reader of the model, then we added the formatting just in that spot. It did not carry back to the original data. And it's going to be the same exact concept with our Pandas styling. So now let's look at, we were able to apply, 2 decimal place formatting here. If we have more decimals, then it cuts it off at 2 because of this formatting. Let's look at applying that to the data frame as well. So most of the things that we're going to do with styling data frames, it's going to be .style on the data frame, and a lot of them are through this .format then under the .style. So df.style.format, and then for the number formatting, we pass it to this format and we give it a dictionary. And the dictionary should have, the keys of the dictionary should be the names of the columns that we want to format. So here we're formatting the reservation price column. And the values should be this format, very similar to what we did here, a format string for how we want to format the data. Now, the one difference that you'll see in what we had here versus what we have here is this one does not include the f, and 2, it does not include the variable itself. So after your braces, you then start with the colon as the first thing. It knows that basically the variable is going to get inputted in here, and then colon, and then the same exact format code that you use for the f strings. So when we run this, then we see that it has put that $sign and the 2 decimal place formatting on there, just to show the decimals. If we put 1, then it would only be a single decimal place showing up there. Now, we created this s variable as df.style.format, the result of that. And when we look at s, it looks like a data frame, right? So you might conclude that, now this s is our data. We just have a formatted version of the data like we do in Excel. But actually, if we check the type of this, it's a styler object, no longer a data frame. And all of a sudden, we can't do some of the things that we did before with it because it's not a data frame anymore, it's a styler. And so that's why I say you always just want to apply this formatting immediately before you're going to display it, and not try to format your existing data frame, because that's just not the way this works. And we'll look at a pattern of what I think is a nice way to apply this formatting in your models. But let's look through the other formatting methods first. So we can apply that, say percentage formatting to percentage active here, 0 decimal place percent formatting. And you can continue to chain additional formatting on a styler object. So you can style stylers, you can style data frames, but you can only do math and other operations with data frames. So here we're adding additional formatting. We also want to format the percentage active column with the percentages. So now we have both of these 2 columns formatted. But you could have also just directly done it from the data frame in the first place by giving it both of these number formats at the same time, just passing both of those in the dictionary. So that's number formatting. Now let's look at cell formatting. So cell formatting we can do with, again, pretty much everything is on .style. And then just as we looked at how we can do apply map to apply a function to every cell of the data frame, we can similarly use .style.apply map to apply formatting to each cell of the data frame of the styler object. So we can see here what this is doing. We can already see the result of this, that this made all the cells values blue. And so what we did here was we created a function that returns the style that we want for each cell. So this is the general structure of how to format cells in Pandas. You write functions which return the styles you want to apply, and then you use apply map to apply those styles. So here we're setting the color to blue for each one of these cells. And this color blue, this is actually CSS, as I mentioned. HTML and CSS is all what's going on in the background here. So you can take a look at, here's a color picker where you can look at different colors, and you can grab the value that you want for your formatting and put that in there, whatever color that you want. Or there are just predefined names for a lot of common colors as well. And you can just Google about CSS colors to learn more about all this. So then color is about the text color, and background color is about the background color of the cells. So similarly here, we've created a function which returns this background color of light green, and we're applying that to all the cells, and so we see them all highlighted in light green. Text align will let you control the alignment of the text within the cells. So here we're now centering each of these values. And you can do multiple at once by just putting semicolons between each of these definitions. So you should always be returning a single string, but each style is going to be the name of what you want to affect, and then a colon, and then the style you want to apply. And then for any additional ones, you put a semicolon and then repeat the same kind of thing again. So here, text color to white, or background color to black, alignment to center. And we see all of that happening here at once. So that leads us into thinking about conditional formatting, where conditional formatting is we want to apply formatting to some subset of the cells. Whatever cells meet some certain condition that we want to apply. So here, let's think about, this is a very short, simple example. We only have 3 people. It's easy to just look through the values for 3 people, but you could imagine you could have hundreds, thousands of people in this table. And what we want to try and do here is highlight the people who are not very active. And so if their activity percentage is less than 50%, then we want to highlight that cell. So the way that we can do that is just adding that conditional logic into our function, which returns the style. And knowing that if we return an empty string, then it's not going to apply any style. But if we return that string with the value, then it is going to apply that style. So here the function does 2 things. So first, it checks if the value we're getting is a string. So this is something we haven't seen before, is instance. is a way of checking the type of some object. So here we're checking, is the value that we're getting a string? If so, we're not going to format it. And the reason we've added this, let me go ahead and comment this out so that now this is all that is executing in the function. We run that and we see we get an error right away. Type error because less than is not supported between a string and float. And that's because we're checking if value is less than 0.5, and we have Jim, Joe, and Mary as values in there, and so now it's trying to say, you know, like Joe is Joe less than 0.5. We see that same exact error. So that's the problem that's going on here. We don't want to compare the strings. We never want to highlight the strings. We just want to ignore them. We do want to take the numeric values and do that comparison. So that's all that this first part means, is just basically skip the string values. Just return no style for the string values. Then we come to, we know we've got a number now, so now we're comparing, is that number less than 0.5? If so, we're going to make the background pink. Otherwise, the value is greater than 0.5, and so we're going to just return no style. And so that's why we see, after we apply this style to the data frame, that only this one Jim value is highlighted, because Jim is the only inactive individual in the data frame. And you know, say you're trying to develop this function and things are not working out the way that you expected. One shortcut or pattern you can use to be able to test out, you know, what am I actually getting in each of these cells as far as the styling. If instead of doing df.style.applyMap, you just do df.applyMap, remember we learned that's taking each cell and applying a function to it, then you can see what styles are going to get applied in each cell. So here, no styles to each of these cells, and here this one is getting background color pink. So a nice way, if your styles just are not coming out the way you expected, see what am I actually getting in each of these cells. Now that's formatting individual cells. We can also do formatting with the entire table at once. So you can hide the index. The index is this 0, 1, 2 thing that goes down the side. So you don't want to see that. Then you can just hide that. You can hide individual columns if you want to exclude those just for the display purposes. You can add a caption or title to the table. And there's a whole lot more that you can do. This gets into how you can basically do whatever you want with the data frames. And this example comes right out of the Pandas documentation, actually. Here is adding a hover style to the data frame. So it does something different when you hover over it. So we're not going to go into the details here. This is really getting outside the scope of the course, but I'm just showing this to kind of highlight you can do whatever you want with these styling of the data frames. Really, the limit is only your imagination and willingness to figure out the specific code to make that happen. One other nice thing that we can do very easily with the styling of data frames is it has this style.bar method which draws bar plots within the individual cells of the data frame. And so if obviously you would just have 3 rows, it was already fairly easy to see, but if you have a lot more, this is getting a lot more useful. From this we can easily see what are the smallest values in each of the columns, what are the largest values in each of the columns based off of those bars. And you can change the color of those by passing a color argument. And there are 3 different ways that we can align those bars as well. So this is the default alignment of it, which is the left alignment. And so that's saying that the lowest value is not going to show up, the highest value is going to be full, and the rest are kind of spread in between. Or you can align from 0, meaning that an empty bar is representing 0, and a full bar is, again, the max. And we also have this mid alignment, which puts 0 at the middle. Negative values are going to be below that, and positive values are going to be above that. And we can also pass a subset to give it only certain columns that we want to apply this to, instead of applying it to every numeric column. So I mentioned I would show you a pattern on the best way to organize yourself with this styling, because again, you don't apply styling to the original data frame. You're creating a new object, a styler object, which has the formatting which is separate from your original data. So that DF there does not have any of this styling that we just played around with in all these prior sections. The original data is still as it was. And so the way that we can work with this in a nice way is by creating styler functions. So you create a function which takes the data frame as the input and returns the styler object. And that way, all your formatting code is totally separate from all your data logic, and you can potentially style multiple different data frames in the same way by just passing them to the same styler function. This also shows you how you can chain a bunch of different formatting commands in one go. If you use the parentheses so that you can break this onto multiple lines, then it looks pretty nice as well. That first we're going to format the numbers for the 2 columns in the ways that we talked about, and then I want to highlight the inactive ones, and I want to center the values, and I want to hide the index, and I want to give it a title of personal info, and I want to draw the bars for the reservation price column. So defining that function, then we can call that on any data frame that we want. So now we see the result of all those changes all together: the caption, the centering, the bar, the highlighting the inactive, the number formatting, and now it all happens from one single function. And because we have that as a function, we can apply it to any data frame that we want. And so, here we're making a new data frame, which is just pulling out the reservation price and percentage active columns and multiplying them by 0.8. We can take that same one and we can pass it to the same styler function, and we see that styled now in the same way. Then there are also a few other shortcuts that Pandas has added that are nice to know about. You can easily highlight the maximum value in a column or the minimum value, and you can pass similar arguments like we did for the bars, color, subset. Same thing on the minimum, you can pass those same kind of values. Background gradient is a really nice one for just giving a color map to the cells, highlighting them based on their values. And you can pass what specific type of color map that you want. And if you want to figure out what are the possible values that I can use in that, you can Google matplotlib color maps. Again, remember that Pandas uses matplotlib under the hood for all these things, and you can see this lists out all the possible color maps that you can use. But the one that we'll focus on here in the course most often is this red, yellow, green color map. And you can do _R to reverse any color map. So red, yellow, green is going to be the highest values in green, the lowest values in red, and a gradient in between. And with the _R, then it's the opposite: highest values in red, lowest values in green, and a gradient in between. And we'll see this definitely is a really nice way to be able to get a nice, quick way to see where the largest and smallest values in a table are. So that's an overview on Pandas styling. We're going to come back next time to learn about graphing with Pandas and Python. So thanks for listening, and see you next time.